Jay Boisseau. I am the Executive Director and founder of the Austin Forum. I'm here with my Managing Director, Heather Bishop, and our main speaker tonight, Hugh Forrest, who is the Chief Programming Officer of South by Southwest and also a member of the Austin Forum Advisory Board and a longtime supporter of the Austin Forum. Hugh, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for inviting me, Jay. It is an honor to be here and somewhat of a tradition for me to be making a appearance in mid to late February at Austin Forum, right?
It is. It's a little different format this year, of course, but happy to have you here and happy to be moving back towards in-person things. And we're going to get to that in just a second. For all of those people who have connected online, this is a new format for us. It's our discussion format. If you've ever been to Austin Forum events before, we used to hold big presentation events in person. We now hold monthly presentation events online. We've actually had a few in person in between the surges, and we're going back to in person on March 1st. We will always have the presentations streamed as well. So our main monthly events at the beginning of each month will always be hybrid from now on, barring another surge from a variant. So we look forward to seeing you on March 1st at our next hybrid event on cybersecurity threats in 2022 and what you can do about them. This is a new event type, though, that we're going to retain. We're going to have discussion events each month, and they will change in format each month. So tonight is going to be an interview and then open questions from the audience. Next month, it's going to be a book review, a book club discussion. We're going to be talking about Neil Stephenson's Snow Crash and the impact that many of the ideas in it have had on technology and society. So each month we'll do a different discussion topic and format. In April, it's going to be an AI and whiskey chat because we had such a successful one last year. So look for these second events of the month to be online, to be discussion oriented as opposed to presentation oriented, but to always have some really interesting speakers as we have tonight. Now, the format for tonight will be me interviewing Hugh for a while, and we're hoping we get a really good audio production out of that because we want to use it in our Austin Forum Upload podcast series. After that, we're going to open it up to questions from all of you. So we're going to ask you to stay muted and to hold your questions until after we get through the scripted questions that Hugh and I have worked on that we hope will convey the maximum amount of useful information to all of you. So with that, Hugh, are you ready to go?
I am ready to go, Jay. Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. So as a background for all of our attendees, I created the Austin Forum on Technology and Society long ago, probably about 16 years ago. And what I love to tell people is the inspiration for creating it was South by Southwest Interactive. I love that there was a place, a conference that people could go to and go from session to session learning about different technologies from different experts. And I kind of wanted to replicate that throughout the years. So instead of one massive week of tremendous amount of content, we did it where we created one presentation per month, a bit easier to consume for some people with busy schedules. But we very much were inspired by South by Southwest and TEDx and some other things. We've been very successful. We've been running for 16 years. South by Southwest has been a supporter, an advocate, and a sponsor of that. And Hugh has been a tremendous champion of the Austin Forum. So very pleased to have Hugh Forrest here tonight to talk about our inspiration, South by Southwest 22, and the fact that it's coming back in person this year. So Hugh, I'll start with a softball question. How excited are you and is the team to, after 2 years of not being in person, to be bringing South by Southwest back in person this year?
I think we're a 10 on a scale of 10, 1 to 10, maybe a 12, maybe a 15. It's last year doing an online event. There was a lot of stuff we learned there, but it's just not the same as doing an in-person event. And we work 9-10 months putting the event together. The reward is when it all comes together in March, and all these people we've been talking to online come together, this celebration of creativity in a very creative city, it is a heck of a lot of fun, very rewarding. And again, we are so excited to be back in person for March 2022, knock on wood.
I'm so excited too. I've been to all of the South by Interactives and South bys for so many years, and was ready to go 2 years ago. And I had an event canceled at the same time, basically, as South by. So welcome back to the in-person part. What are you all doing this year in particular to take precautions about COVID? We know the Omicron numbers, the case counts are plummeting. Wonderful news, but I know you're still being careful. So what are you all doing?
Yeah, we're as what we did with 2020. We are working extremely closely with APH, Austin Public Health, taking all our cues from them in terms of what we do. Specifically, that means that if you have registered for the event and you come to the Austin Convention Center to pick up your badge, you'll have to show your vaccination status, booster status. If you haven't been vaccinated, you'll have to show that you had a negative test in the last 72 hours. All the conference facilities that we use, the Austin Convention Center, the Hilton, the JW Marriott, Four Seasons, Fairmont, et cetera, will be mask required at all times. So taking the safety precautions very seriously. And if you're interested in learning, anyone watching tonight is interested in learning more details on that, you can go to the South by Southwest website, sxsw.com. At the top of the page, there's a link that says COVID protocols for South by Southwest, and it will explain that information in much more detail.
Great. Well, before we start talking about some of the content and the return to in-person, I did want to ask you, since you did have to execute the entire festival online last year, what were your top learnings out of that? And how much of that are you going to retain this year in bringing some content to people online?
Great question. I think we learned a ton last year. And like every other business, we had to learn that stuff really quickly. The one of the advantages South by Southwest has is it's been going for 30 years, and every year we got a little better and learned a little more. And then you come to the pandemic and we have to completely relearn the business model in the space of the business model and the approach in the space of 10 months. So we learned a lot from doing the online event last year. We also, as much as we're excited about the 2022 event being in person, there were a lot of advantages for doing the thing online, and I think replicated by what you've seen with what we do with the Austin Forum. One of our biggest challenges at South by Southwest has always been that we have sessions that there aren't as many seats as people who want to get in, and that's frustrating. In an online space, everyone got in, that you instantly get rid of that problem. I think we also saw in an online, the online event last year, it made it a lot easier for people to, navigate from one event to a completely different event, because you're just doing that with the click of a mouse, as opposed to having to walk across the street or walk to the other end of the convention center. So it made, it in many ways allowed people to experience more different kinds of the event than they had previously, and see more music, for instance, or see more films, as well as seeing content. So we also saw that it opened us up to a new audience, people from around the world who could never travel to the event but could take it in online. So again, there were a lot of advantages and things we learned there. We will have a lot of online stuff for the 2022 event. It falls into that magic word called hybrid. So people can we will sell online badges in addition, or we are selling online badges in addition to in-person badges, and so that makes the event available to a wide international audience, and we'll have a lot of content that is broadcast live and then broadcast tape delayed on the South by Southwest website. So if you miss a session or can't get into a session, you can often go back that night to your hotel or your home and watch the session or watch the session at a later date. So again, technically we are a hybrid event for 2022, and hoping to bring some of the best practices and lessons learned from 2021 into the fold for this year's event. I will say that, the one thing that the biggest thing that we couldn't replicate for an online event, and I think it's the same with every other event that's used, that had to go to an online platform, is you just can't replicate the kind of serendipity that often occurs at events like South by Southwest, where you run into someone that you had no expectation of running into, someone who can help you with something and weren't expecting that, and it turns out to really completely change or make your experience in a positive way, and that is really hard to do online. So again, looking forward to the in-personness of 2022, when we will see more of that South by Southwest serendipity factor again.
You bring up great points about the transition to online, and we've seen those in the monthly Austin Forum events that used to be only in person, then became online. There were certainly some advantages, and I totally agree with your statements about what's hard to replicate. I've seen some tools that are starting to attempt to replicate that, like randomly shuffling people into meetup rooms and whatnot, but it's still not the same as the in-person 3D experience of moving to places and running into people on the way to places or in places you didn't expect to see them. Do you expect that South by Southwest, in bringing back all of those serendipitous advantages in person, but embracing online and always looking to future technologies, will become a leader in hybrid programming, embracing maybe even things like metaverse technologies and such, as it brings online and real world together?
So Jay, every time you say that M word, some furry animal in some faraway place gets a needle stuck into their back or something. Yeah, I think that we did a metaverse experiment last year. It was very positively received. We'll do more of that in 2022. And I think we'll see even more of that in the short term and medium term future. That was always my kind of straw man argument when we talked about South by Southwest, is, are we going to get to a point where VR technology is so much improved that it will be easy to experience South by Southwest or events like South by Southwest without leaving your living room? And I always, it was a straw man argument. So I always said, no, you want to be in person. We have a human need to be in person. Little did I realize the real argument about what might, long-term damage South by Southwest was a virus. But there we are. So again, I think that to your question, we will continue to explore and push new ways to deliver content to our audience and our community, new ways to bring in new people, engage new people. That said, our bread and butter for 30 years has been in-person meetings. And I always think that one of the most, the ironies of South by Southwest is so much of what we do is bring together people who are working on cool new technology that connects people in ways you would never expect. And yet what we always find is it's not about technology, it's face-to-face interactions that are so special at events like South by Southwest, at events like the Austin Forum, at events like Austin Startup Week. So I think we'll, again, continue to do in-person events and continue to augment those with new and impressive kinds of technology.
So you mentioned the pandemic, and of course, one of the big impacts it had was a cancellation and then an online version of the meeting. How has the pandemic and your response to it changed the higher level South by vision and goals, or has it changed the overall vision and goals?
I don't know that it's changed our vision and goals all that much. It just, it was a disruption that we never expected, foresaw, like most other people did, and most other companies didn't foresee either. So it's made us adopt new processes, new new ways of thinking, figure out how we can adopt business strategies that will be more focused on year-round content and year-round monetization, as opposed to content that only happens at 2 weeks out of the year. That was, again, something we've been thinking about, talking about before. But again, the pandemic forced us all to, jumpstart, quick start, all those kinds of conversations, all those kinds of thinking processes. And, I think you'll see more of that in the future from South by Southwest, where we're doing more things at other times of the year, more content at other times of the year and again, that will help protect us from future challenges like this one, help protect us when we have really bad weather at South by Southwest or have other kinds of unforeseen problems. And I think that ultimately we will come out of this stronger. But the 24 months since March of 2020 have been a hell of a difficult ride, as they have been for most everyone on this call and on this Zoom tonight. And I specifically remember talking to you, Jay, in early March 2020 and saying, I think we're going to do this. I think we're going to do this. And you saying, Hugh, you can't predict viruses. and you were righter than most people were, or very accurate than most people were. Because again, early March, we all thought, this is no big deal. We can get through this, and how wrong we were. Early March 2020.
Well, I just appreciate you all being so resilient and finding a way to come back last year in an online way, which was completely the opposite of how you delivered all previous South Bys. And now this year, retaining that while going back to also having in-person content. So I think in the end, South by will be even better for all of it. So let me ask you a little bit about the content though. So the pandemic clearly changed how you delivered it last year and augmented how you'll deliver it going forward in the future. But what about content? How much are you seeing the content change, and how much are you all changing the themes based on the increase in work from anywhere, the increase in digital transformation, the increased attention to digital transformation, the increase in interest in things like epidemics in healthcare and rapid development of vaccines? Are you seeing lots of new content that is directly or indirectly related to the pandemic impact on society?
To a degree, maybe not as radically as you're painting it there. We were doing health and med tech content. We've been doing that for the last 5 years, and so we will continue to do that. That was really inspired more by the Dell Medical School opening in Austin as opposed to the pandemic, but certainly a significant portion of that health and med tech content for 2022 will be talking about pandemic recovery, pandemic strategies, how to prevent the next pandemic, that type thing. We have a summit this year on future of work, but we've been doing that kind of content for the last few years as well. But, again, what was in theory in terms of future of work in 2019, has completely come to pass in 2022 with more of us working from home, with more people, quitting their jobs and deciding they wanted to do something else. We all kind of talked about this in theory 3 years ago. It's much more in place now. I think the other thing that's really different, or not, maybe really different is too strong, but different in 2022 versus our last in-person event in 2019 was, in that 3-year interim, George Floyd happened. And that really changed, for a lot of us, the narrative of what we're doing in this country, what we're doing wrong and how we need to improve. And I feel like we were doing a pretty good job in terms of showcasing DEI at South by Southwest before. I know that we've doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on that for 2022. And it's something that we need to continue to do as we move forward. So I'm always happy, excited, proud that South by Southwest can address these real world issues. and hopefully be a force for positive change, and as well, hopefully provide solutions that inspire people. I think one of the best things that we do at South by Southwest is providing inspiration to people with our content, with our speakers, with our bands and films, and stating the obvious. The world needs a lot of inspiration in 2022. And if we can help provide some of that, then we're doing something good and doing our job.
Well, I appreciate you bringing up the diversity, equity, and inclusion topic. It's one of the areas that I think South by has always been better than most conferences. And I understand the desire to ramp that even further. By the way, personally, I've always appreciated your role on our advisory board for the Austin Forum in helping us to connect to a diverse range of speakers and ensuring your voice and that we hear it about the importance. And I think that we do a pretty good job of that in our speakers over the course of a year as well. But a lot of that comes from Hugh Forrest. So thank you very much.
Well, Jay, let me tell you, it's much more fun to remind you about doing DEI than when people remind me about doing more DEI. But the bottom line is the same. It's an important thing moving forward. And I'm happy that we're doing more of that and that the Austin Forum has done a lot of that as well. So all good.
All right, so let's talk about the structure and how that relates to the content this year. You've got some new tracks, you've got these summits. Can you share with us your thinking behind some of these, behind the summits and behind the new tracks?
Well, we've got 15 tracks this year. For 2020, we had 20 tracks. Don't read anything into that we were going to add one track every year, but we pulled that back a little for 2022, 15 tracks. Two of the tracks that we added for this year, or kind of morphed for this year, we have a climate change track. We had been doing more climate related content over the last few years, and we had a climate and social action track in 2020. This year, we changed that to climate change, and have a lot of really powerful speakers involved there, and really excited about that. The other thing that we added for 2022 is a transportation track. That has a lot of content about EVs in there, but it also has a lot of content about commercial space travel and future of aviation and trains and your favorite topic, scooters and the Hyperloop and all kinds of other transportation as well as delivery stuff. I think that transportation track, kind of aligns with what I said earlier about the Dell Medical School, is that South by Southwest has always been a very strong reflection of what is happening and trending in Austin. And, it is unmistakable that since Tesla moved here, since Elon moved here, there's a long tail that has created a very robust transportation industry here. And we felt we should reflect that with a track at South by Southwest. You also mentioned summits. Summits are tracks generally last 4 to 6 days. Summits are shorter. They're 2 days. They're deep dives into specific topics. So some of the summits that we are doing for 2022, we've got a summit on Finance 3.0, which is crypto. We have got a summit on future of work. Again, that's something very important in where we are in 2022 and content that we've been covering before. We also have a summit on cannabis. We had been doing a track on cannabis. This year, we pushed that back to a summit. We also have a summit on psychedelics, which you can argue the psychedelic industry is where the cannabis industry was 10 years ago. And I think a lot of that psychedelic track summit inspiration came from Austin resident Tim Ferriss, who has really, really pushed that, and will be doing a session on psychedelics at 2022. So again, the summit stuff is just makes it a little bit easier to find some of this content and deep dive into this content. I think, or I know that one of the challenges going on, the challenges we always have at South by Southwest is that there's so much information, so much content, so many things to do. It's often, difficult to find what you want. As hard as much as we work on making it easier to find. So tracks and summits help with that location. Locating the content that you want to find, and hopefully get people the information that they most want out of the event.
Great. Well, Hugh, I know as Chief Programming Officer, you love all of your content kids, but as Hugh Forrest, interested techie, and interested in all the other aspects of South by Southwest because it has such a diverse program, what are you personally most excited about this year at South by Southwest? And don't worry, we won't share this recording with anybody who's speaking at South by Southwest.
Nice. Well, I'm working on that transportation track, so I'm really excited about that. I am fascinated how Austin is changing, and how so much of that change is related to our chief Twitterer who moved here. But other things that I'm really excited about, and one, aligns back to something you said earlier, someone who I've wanted to have speak at South by Southwest for ages. We finally secured him this year and announced him earlier this week as a keynote. That is Neil Stevenson. He wrote the book Snow Crash, which is in your book reading, and Snow Crash, is the Bible for the metaverse. So it's fascinating to have him here. He's got a new book out a new book that was released in November called Termination Shock. And the new book is about climate change. And it's about a tech billionaire or trillionaire who decides that they're going to try to make the world better in terms of mitigating climate change. You can, you can draw your parallels to real world events there. So really excited to have Neil Stevenson involved, and he's someone who doesn't speak a whole lot. So that'll be great. Another one that we announced this past week is someone I wasn't familiar with until 6 weeks ago, a gentleman out of Oakland named Eddie Zhang. He's someone who spent 25 years in prison in a kind of Kafkaesque journey of a relatively small crime committed as a teenager, and then just never being able to get out. But when he did finally get out, he developed a foundation that helps at-risk youth. There's an incredible story about Eddie Zhang in the New Yorker from early January or late December. He's going to be talking about the penal system, how you reform that, how you help immigrants who are challenged in this country. Really excited to have Eddie there, and Eddie at the event, and Eddie definitely falls into what I talked about earlier about showcasing people who are inspirational, who have a vision, who have taken something not positive in their life and turned it around, and are a role model for how we can all do better. So those are a few of the things that I'm extremely excited about. But as you said, all our content is amazing, and I'm excited about all of it. We don't have enough time to talk about all of it tonight.
Well, fortunately, you have a website that it's actually almost even hard to find things in the website because there's so much, and that's a good problem to have. But every time I come across something, even in the website, I think, oh, I want to see that. I want to attend that. And then you issue another announcement by email, and I get that blast. And I think the last one you mentioned, Lizzo and Scott Galloway and Beck. And I think that was just earlier this week, a few weeks before South by. Do you have any other big email announcements are coming out about new content, new speakers, new keynotes?
Softball down the middle, Jay. Thank you. Yeah, we did announce February 15th, Tuesday this week. We had probably our biggest in terms of volume announcement of keynotes and featured speakers ever. We announced 3 keynotes, I think, and then 100 plus featured speakers. And again, that ranged Lizzo and Beck as keynotes. Featured speakers ranging from Frances Haugen, the whistleblower, to Doug Parker, CEO of American Airlines. We do have one more big featured speaker and keynote announcement. That will be either in late February or early March, and have some amazing names lined up for that. This is a little bit later than we typically announce this stuff, but I think that's a factor of, that just in the last 2 or 3 weeks, Omicron has begun to plateau, and people who are a little bit on the fence about speaking are all of a sudden saying, yeah, I want to be involved. And I think that, just as we were we were one of the first big events, big conferences to cancel in March 2020. We're one of the first big conferences to come out of the Omicron spike. And there's, more so than ever before, we're getting people who are kind of dropping in our lap in mid-February saying, hey, do you still have space? I want to speak. And my advice to my staff is always like, tell them we do it next year. But there have been so many amazing people that have fallen in our laps and that are getting back to us at this point that we're, again, adding some really, really cool stuff. So stay tuned. And let me say the other thing there, and you touched on it, is, if you are investing in a badge for South by Southwest, or if you're thinking about investing in a badge for South by Southwest, or if you are not going to invest in a badge for South by Southwest, but want to figure out the best way you can take advantage of the event, spend some time on browsing the South by Southwest schedule. See who's coming to town, when they're coming to town, what kind of free events there are, where you might be able to network with these folks, even if you don't have a badge. It's a big event. It's easy to feel overwhelmed at South by Southwest if you don't have a plan. So that is always my number one point of advice: is come up with a plan of what you're trying to see, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to learn, who you're trying to meet, and how you're going to do that at the event. And it's, easy and fair that if a better opportunity arises, you can ditch the plan. But it's I tend to think you're going to be lost if you don't have a plan and just show up and don't quite know what you're doing. Again, it's really easy to get overwhelmed by Southwest if that's your approach.
Hugh, that's great advice, and that's the advice I give to people. I'm sort of OCD. I try to master things when I attend them, and South by is not one of those things that you can attend 1,000 plus sessions. So the first few years I went, I recall, really loving what I saw, but this constant fear of missing out on all the great things that were scheduled at the same times. And I remember that transition year when I finally just said to myself, it's not about what you missed. It's about what you saw. If you just saw lots of great stuff, it was worth it. And so I do like the fact that some of it is now going to be streamed and recorded, and I can go back and see some of it. But I hope I can retain that sense of, you go in with the plan, you just make sure you see good stuff and you don't worry about what you didn't see, because you're not going to see all of it anyway. But as long as you spend that week seeing great stuff, you can be inspired, you can meet new people, and it's totally worth it. I want to talk about the attendance before I get to some practical closing questions for our listeners. The attendance, you've always had a huge number of people come to this, and you've always told me, Jay, it's not about the numbers. It's about the quality of the content and the amount of great content, not the attendance. I would expect that attendance would be down even if in person, even if total attendance might be up because of in-person plus online content. Are you seeing that, or what kind of trends, or are you actually seeing just a rush of people now signing up to come in person because they're so excited to get back to in-person things again? How is that trend playing out? And in particular, for your international visitors, you always have a lot of folks from overseas attending this. So what is it looking like domestically, and what is it looking like from overseas?
Yeah, our patterns are just completely different this year than they have been before. I mean, 10 years ago when we had the Austin skyline was completely different. We had fewer downtown hotels. We'd have so many people register 5 months out because they wanted to get a downtown hotel. Now that we have more downtown hotels, that need to register early in the season is not quite as pressing. Then this year, I think a lot of people have waited until February to see, is Omicron, going to have plateaued? Is it going to be safe for me to be in Austin if I wear a mask? And again, we're seeing one of our most robust Februaries ever in terms of badge sales, where every day is better than the next day. Now, I do think that we will be a little bit down in our international attendance for 2022, simply because of some of the travel restrictions, particularly from some of the Asian countries that have stricter rules on entry. Leaving and then coming back. So that'll be a little bit different. One of the things that had been really amazing pre-COVID was that our international attendance had grown to about 25% of our total badge holders, meaning, 1 in every 4 badge holders was from outside the US. I don't think that's going to be quite the case in 2022, but I expect we'll get back there in 2023. One of the things that I'm really excited about is that new direct flight from Austin to Amsterdam, although that doesn't start until end of March, but that's going to, bring even more of our friends from Europe to the 2023 event. And I think that again we'll see that international attendance begin to spike again next year, probably fairly plateaued this year as compared to 2019 or 2020.
So that makes total sense. I'm looking. The attendees are also more than I can possibly meet, even though I try to meet as many as possible. So again, I'm sure it'll be lots of people, and I'll meet as many as I can, and I'll see seas of people trying to get into content. It'll be exciting. In terms of advice for people who are attending in person, who are attending online, or who are not buying a badge but want to benefit from Summit. So this is kind of a 3-part question. What's your best advice for those attending in person, for those attending online but not in person, and for those who aren't buying a badge but want to get some benefit out of South by? I think you've kind of addressed it with the plan, but I'd like to hear you break it down by each of those groups.
Yeah, if you're attending the event, again, spend some time coming up with your plan. I mean, it's a big investment. It's a big investment of money. It's a big investment of time, and it deserves you thinking about it beforehand. And South by Southwest, like any event, is ultimately about networking. So if you're trying to meet X person at South by Southwest, it's really good to reach out to them now via the South by Social channel, via Twitter, via Facebook, via LinkedIn, and try to set up a meeting now. It's going to be harder if you try to do it on the spot. So again, that all just flows into the idea of planning in advance. For people who are buying or only participating online, buying the virtual badge, I think that you can be a little more relaxed in your planning because you can digest a lot of that content at your leisure. There will be some live events, but a lot of it will be videoed on demand or recorded and rerun. So again, you have a little bit not so stringent in terms of your planning there, but I still think that the more you plan and the more you kind of assess your goals beforehand, the more positive experience you're going to have. Then for that third group of people who aren't buying a badge, my son's education fund suffers, but it's all good. And I would say, be strategic in terms of finding the free events and thinking about ways you can meet people. One of the best things that happens during South by Southwest, and it is absolutely free, is that there's a startup crawl on Friday, March 11th. That leaves at Capital Factory. It's organized by Capital Factory. It is a great way to meet some of the city's most interesting startups, most innovative entrepreneurs, meet other people from out of town. You don't need a badge for that. It is absolutely 100% free. And there are numerous other events, particularly that various co-working spaces are hosting. So again, there are great ways to take advantage of South by Southwest, even if you don't have a badge. And the number one thing it comes down to, and I'm not particularly good at this, and I think a lot of people in the tech space are not particularly good at it, is trying to overcome your fears and not be afraid of networking. Say hello to the person next to you. They're just as shy and scared of talking to strangers as you are, but it is amazing the kind of connections that you will make and the kinds of long-term, short-term, medium-term, long-term things that can come out of those connections. Some of the best connections that I've made at South by Southwest over the years are people I have met randomly and stayed in touch with, and they've opened up doors that I would never have thought of. So again, overcome your fear, be open to meeting people, and that will lead to some really positive outcomes.
I love all of that advice. And I don't even think I've told you this yet. It's going to come up at our advisory board meeting, so you'll hear about it then. But I'm going to have the Austin Forum team and advisory board put together a collective guide to attending South by from each of those three angles. If you're attending in person, if you're attending online, or if you're not buying a badge, but still want to identify some of the quality free events that go with it. So I'll make sure, of course, and take all of your input and put into that document. But for those of you who are regular Austin Forum attendees, we'll be sharing that at the March 1st presentation event on cybersecurity threats. So we hope folks will attend that, and we'll share a document then and how to access it. And of course, anybody can share it with anybody else. And we'll even provide some links to some other friends and colleagues' guides to South by this year. Lots of people make recommendations on things to see and things to do. So we hope to be an avenue for helping people make those plans, and maybe even an avenue for helping with the networking part as well. We have a special announcement we're going to make in about a week as well about networking, and that's something we're creating for South by. But folks will have to stay tuned for that.
Well, that's great to hear, Jay. I mean, I have over the years I've seen people who have literally a folder or a binder of their schedule, and those people by and large are the power users of South by Southwest. They get the most out of it. They have a game plan, something to follow that really helps them navigate the event at a much more strategic level than others can. So excited that you're doing that.
Yeah, it does. Having a plan helps. You never end up sticking entirely to the plan. And I have noticed that the 8 a.m. sessions that I've marked on my calendar seem to be the misses often, but that's okay.
Well, you'll be happy to know we don't have 8 a.m. sessions this year for you and you only, Jay. We took that advice. We start the day a little bit later and end the day a little bit earlier in 2022. We're always tweaking, evolving the event, trying to take input from people's to improve. And I think that's one of the things that continues to make the event compelling, is that we are part of a very very strong, very powerful community that has lots of great ideas, and in our best days we implement those ideas and get better too.
Well, I love that you're starting a little later this year. And I also love that you, with all your experience, think that by ending a little earlier, it's going to make any difference at all, because we all know what drives the end is the end of the last networking event sponsored by the many participants and sponsors and vendors that attend South by. The 2 a.m. bar closing time in Austin also has an effect on the ending time each day as well. But I do like that the events are going to start just a little later. So that's great. I'm going to ask you a big picture point and then one more advice question, and then we'll be done with the Q&A part. What do you think is going to be, if you had to predict, what do you think is going to be the biggest trend or talking point coming out of this year's event? I know it's hard to predict the future, but if you know the programming better than anyone, what you have a feel for this, what do you think it might be?
Well, I'll answer that in at least two different ways. I think that whether or not it is a trend, a short-term, medium-term, long-term trend, you are going to see a ton of NFT companies, startups in Austin in March. So they have a lot of money. They're spending a lot of money. Every inch of concrete that can be sponsored is going to have an NFT company attached to it. And
by the way, I think you're proving my previous point that the day will end when the NFT party companies with all the money, when their party's end.
Yeah. Is that the biggest trend coming out of the event? I don't think so. I think that, there are a lot of NFT sessions about how NFTs can, make musicians, for instance, get more equitable pay for musicians. I don't know if that's a trend or not. I go back to the most basic thing. I think the trend that people are going to see and be reminded of is the power of face-to-face interactions and the power of creativity. And those are the things that we've always emphasized at South by Southwest. So it's kind of boring to say that, but the fact that this thing has survived for 30 years and has continued to get bigger is a testimony to how important those things are. Bringing creative people together, bringing creative people of all stripes together in a very, very creative city in March when spring is beginning to unfold. It's a powerful combination. And again, big picture, that's going to be the big takeaway.
All right. Well, my last question for you, now that we've talked so much about South by 22, is when do you all start planning for South by 2023? And for the listeners, the attendees here tonight and the listeners after the fact, how can they get involved? How can Austin Forum folks get involved in helping with the planning and execution for South by Southwest 2023?
We'll spend a good 6 weeks to 2 months after South by Southwest 2022, dissecting what went right and what went wrong about this year's event. A lot of that will be from our personal experiences, but a lot of it will be reading feedback, pouring through feedback, hearing what the community said, what their ideas are in terms of how we can get better. That is always a sobering process, because you often find that what you thought went well didn't go as well as what you thought, and what you thought didn't go well went a lot worse than you thought. But it's part of the process of learning and trying to get better and trying to evolve. By May, early May, we are turned around and focused on 2023. And then the most important point here, and I appreciate, again, the softball, is that mid to late June, we open the panel picker process for 2023. And the panel picker process is our kind of modified crowdsourcing approach to content, where we ask anyone in the community, anyone who can get online, to enter a speaking proposal. And it ends up being that about 70% of our content comes from the community this way. The panel picker process has many flaws, but it has even more strengths and assets. It's a great way to connect with our community in June. It's a great way to hear what our community is interested in. Do they want more NFT sessions? Do they want more sessions on VR? Do they want more sessions on crypto? Do they want more sessions on the Hyperloop? It's a great way to expand into other verticals, as well as to get more speakers from all over the world in the event. So again, if you want to be involved with South by Southwest, entering a panel picker proposal in June is a great way to get involved. Late June is also when we start accepting entries for South by Southwest Pitch, which is our startup competition, for the South by Southwest Innovation Awards, as well as the South by Southwest Community Service Awards. So, we're a year-round cycle. And I think that's one of the things that's helped us grow is pushing it to year-round and having that much attention on what we do in March.
Thank you very much. And thanks everybody for attending tonight. Look forward to starting to see many of you again in person. I've seen so many people that I've met over the years online tonight, and but some that I haven't seen in 2 years. So I hope to see you on March 1st. If not then, I hope to see you at South by. And if not then, please check out some of the other upcoming in-person events, including networking. And if you can't make those, as always, we hope to see you online, and we'll make recordings of the main monthly events available online. With that, Heather, any final words?
No, just thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Hugh. We appreciate you being here and for speaking with everyone. And that's all we have.
Great. Have a good night and a good rest of your week, everyone.
I'll take care. Be safe.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Forum Upload. You can listen to additional episodes and check out a schedule of our monthly in-person events at austinforum.org. The Upload is a production of the Austin Forum on Technology and Society, a nonprofit organization here in Austin, Texas.